We're going to talk about high school athletics and a new program put forth by the Michigan High School Athletic Association called the PBA, the Personal Branding Activity. And with us to discuss it this morning, we are pleased to welcome to the program the Executive Director of the MHSAA. He is Mark Uyl. Mark, good morning to you.
Good morning, Art. Good to be with you.
Oh, thanks for joining us today. When I first heard about the PBA, I said, why? And then I realized you're not alone. You're, the 46th state to do this? What brought it about?
So this, certainly kids being able to benefit for the use of their name, image, and likeness has now been a thing at the collegiate level now for a handful of years.
Right.
Once that, became reality at that level, and by the way, what's allowed at the college level versus the high school are two different things, and I'm sure on our conversation we'll get into a few of those details. But when that happened at the college level, several states, whether it was by legislative action through a state law or by their athletic association, there was some pressure that the same individual allowance had to happen at the high school level. This almost became state law in Michigan back in both 2023 and 2024. There was a bill that actually was passed in our House of Representatives. It didn't get taken up by the Senate, and obviously then didn't get to our governor's desk. But, back in 2023 and 2024, we could tell that this was coming. And, I think we intentionally went very, very slow in this process to make sure that whatever we ended up with, we got it right. And we didn't necessarily try and get it fast. And, we're now, there's only 3 states left that currently don't allow these individual opportunities for individual kids. And that's where we've landed. The last thing I'll say is, as this almost through the legislative process, as this almost became law, what we realized is what our schools could live with were individual opportunities for individual students. What our schools could not live with would be any kind of group activity or collective activity, which really now defines what NIL looks like at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
And it was very clear that, as we now took this step forward, that's where we had to land.
And the other problem, as I see it with the NIL, is the portal. And you have nothing that looks like that.
No, so this amendment here to our long-standing amateur rules is what's gotten tweaked. None of our other regulations have changed. So our transfer rule has not changed. Our awards rule has not changed. So again, at the college level, a lot of times NIL and the transfer portal are almost concepts that are one and the same. And again, that's another huge distinction where those will continue to be separate and continue to be handled differently at the high school level.
So I have a couple of questions about this as I've read the various do's and don'ts and the allowed and not alloweds. First one that struck me is that the student, for example, a young athlete, let's pick a football player, for example, can do a car commercial but has to wear street clothes, can't have any insignia or identifying mark that has to do with what he does as an athlete. Why?
So these are individual deals for individual kids. The use of the school uniform, the school name, the school insignia, the school property, the school's facilities, those are all the intellectual property of the school district. What's been interesting, even at the college level, is many of the college NIL deals that have been going on for a number of years. The student athlete cannot use any of the intellectual property of that school. So again, it reinforces the concept that these individual deals that kids can go out if there's a market for them, and they're able to secure, some kind of a personal branding opportunity, it has to be completely disconnected from the school. So you're exactly right that car dealer that wants to use a high school student athlete in their commercial, that student can now earn compensation for that, but it can't be done in any of the intellectual property of the school, the league, or the conference.
Well, since the school owns its intellectual property, what if the school says to the young man, yeah, you can wear your jersey?
Can happen. So part of being a member of the MHSAA is our schools agree to adopt and to follow all of our regulations. And what's interesting, Art, is, one thing is we've talked about this for the last few years with our schools, is our schools were clear, loud and clear, that they wanted a disconnection completely from the school. They said if kids are individually going to go out and try and find an opportunity like this, we do not want our school district, because then that gets very complicated very fast of, okay, who's the company or business? And now if that athlete appears in their jersey, well, now is that an endorsement by the school district for that company? And things get super, super complicated very quickly. So that's why that had to be a pretty bright line in terms of what is or what isn't allowed.
And before we get into some of the really nitty-gritty, let me give you one more of the way my twisted mind thinks. In reading this, I understand it specifies several times this is not pay for play. But the way I view it, in many ways it is pay for play. And here's why I say that. The bench warming baseball player who never gets in a game is never going to get a PBA deal. The star quarterback, however, who leads his team to victory, is going to get lots of deals, all because his play gave him the name. So in a way, it's kind of a backdoor pay for play, isn't it?
I'm not sure about that. So the advantage we have here of being 47th rather than first is we have the experience of what's gone on in the other 46 states. And there's really been three groups of kids that are getting access to these kinds of opportunities. First, these are high-level Power 4 conference recruits at the college level in certain sports at certain positions. So just because someone happens to be a very good quarterback, for example, at their local high school does not mean that there are going to be these opportunities that come along.
Well, let's take these one at a time, because you wouldn't get to that high-level recruit if you weren't playing at a high level.
Yeah, that's probably true. But yet that's a very small group of students, infinitely small group of students who are going to get those kinds of opportunities. For example, a state like North Carolina, who's got about 1 million more residents than we do here in Michigan. They're a population of 11 million. They've allowed NIL at the high school level now for a handful of years. And in their most recent school year, they've got 0.0024% of high school athletes who have gotten some kind of an opportunity like that, which equals one student out of every 780 high school students in North Carolina. So I think for anybody going to say they're getting numerous, the data is just showing something different.
Yeah, that I can believe that. I can understand that. So when did this go into effect?
So it went into effect when our board approved it, which happened here now almost 2 weeks ago. So like I said, it was becoming more and more difficult for us, only being one of 4 states to not allow this. Certainly the courts around the country, when these issues have ended up in a courtroom, the traditional amateur rules were having a really tough go in terms of being able to withhold any legal or even legislative challenges. So as all of these stars aligned, we were also the last state in the Midwest to not allow it. Ohio changed their policy earlier in the fall. We just felt like, looking at what was happening around the country, that now was the time. And so this went into effect as of January.
Mark, hang on. I got to take a break. We'll come back, chat more about the PBA from the Michigan High School Athletic Association with Mark Ewell, its executive director. More ahead on the Art Lewis Show.
How do you afford the things you
All right, we're back with you here on the Art Lewis Show. We're talking about the Michigan High School Athletic Association's new program called PBA. personal, well, let's see exactly how they phrase it here, but it's a program modeled a little bit after the NIL, but quite different in the way it's executed. It's called the Personal Branding Activity. Mark Ewell, who is the executive director of the MHSAA, is with us this morning. So, Mark, let's take a look at some of the nitty-gritty here in terms of how all of this happens. First of all, the student athlete performs and is spotted by a business person. First of all, can that business person have any relationship with the school at all?
They cannot. So it's got to be completely disconnected from the school. And so a lot of times it's going to be kids, and we touched on it last segment. So it's going to be your high level, Division I national type recruit who are going to have these opportunities. The other groups that states have found is that really elite Olympic sport athletes. So, for example, individual athletes, runners have been sponsored by shoe companies. We've had nationally some golfers be sponsored by a equipment company. So you're going to see some of those kids. And then kind of the third group around the country that we've seen get access to this are kids that for whatever reason have an incredible social media following. So it could be because of their reputation as an athlete, or it could actually be a student because they're, what the content they share on social media is incredibly creative. It's incredibly witty. And so you've seen some businesses try and connect with those kids. But in those categories, it is completely disconnected with the school. So that donor or that booster, that member of the Board of Education at a certain school or a school district can't be involved in the personal branding business in any way.
And do I understand? Let's pick a runner, for example, and ABC Shoe Company decides that they want to support this youngster and have him do a commercial for them. He can't be in his school garb, but can they show him? They can show him running, obviously, as long as he has no reference in any way to the school. So what can he say in the commercial about what he does? Can he say he's a high school runner without mentioning the school?
Sure, they can. And so I think a very real scenario is going to be, for example, we've got a young lady here in Michigan who actually was the Gatorade cross country runner of the year. So a sophomore at one of our Michigan high schools. And so she is going to have some opportunities from one of the running shoe companies. And the way that this will work is that she'll post on her social media about Shoe X and about how Shoe X helps her as she competes, as she trains, as she, tries to continue to win races. So she'll post on her social media a time or two a week about the brand, about the product, and then because of that, she will get compensated. So kind of appearing in the traditional commercials, you won't see a lot of that, but it's really with kids posting about a brand on social media. Again, it's not in any of their school uniforms, but a lot of these kids are part of clubs or travel groups, so they could be wearing their non-school uniform and, again, talking about their experiences of an athlete in a very general way.
It's almost an interesting conflict in some ways, because that same runner who is active on social media probably has lots of social media posts about her school and her running. It's pretty hard to disassociate, isn't it?
Well, it can be, but like I said, with the guidance that we've put out there, and 46 other states have figured it out, it is a close distinction. But the key is that even references that I'm a high school athlete, I don't think that's the part that creates heartburn. I think the part that will create heartburn is the fact that it can't be any school folks involved in this. So the coach can't be out there trying to procure these kinds of opportunities, or a member of the administration or a member of the booster club. So I think what's even more important is to have some very bright, clear lines when it comes with the adults I think in education, a lot of times some of our biggest headaches and challenges come from the actions and behavior of adults, and it's rarely the students, and I think that will play out here.
I think you're so right. How about money? Any limits?
There are no limits currently. We're going to see, and of course, with the disclosure process, we'll see those as they come in. The only financial terms it has to comply with is a fair market value. That's actually the same language that the NCAA uses. It's the language that other states do. So currently, any kind of a deal needs to be disclosed. It doesn't matter how low the dollar amount is or how high the dollar amount is, but that'll be data that we'll track and keep and then share probably at the end of each season just to see exactly what opportunities are out there.
Because of the need to disassociate from the school when you get a PBA, do the schools have a role in administering this in terms of approving a young athlete getting this?
Sure. So it really works. The best example I can use is with our transfer rules. So, for example, a family comes in and says, hey, we're thinking about moving into the community or we're thinking about transferring to the school. What are the rules and regulations in place? Well, personal branding is going to work exactly the same way. That student could come in and say, look, can you give me some guidance here when it deals with my personal branding opportunities? Same way with a transfer. What the schools will then do is they'll share what the rule is with the student, give them probably some real life scenarios of here, given what you're telling me, here are some things that would be allowed, here would be some things that would not be allowed, and then here's the process that you need to follow moving forward. No different than if you're going to transfer, here are the rules. Here's what your family would need to do to comply with that to be eligible here once you do transfer. But on the transfer side, the school then cannot be involved in saying, well, here's a local realtor that you should call, or here are some local houses that you should go out and look at. That's where that line is drawn between sharing what the rule and regulation is and providing guidance. In personal branding will be that same way. So here's the rule, here's the guidance, but yet nobody here at the school can actively go out and try and help you secure some of these opportunities. And again, that's the advantage of being 47th rather than first, as we've looked at a lot of the other state policies that have really kind of threaded this needle, and we're pretty comfortable with the spot that we've landed.
What impact, if any, does a PBA have on amateur status for the athlete?
Really not. So that's really the fundamental change here, that a lot of those traditional amateur status rules that said kids in high school who happen to play a sport really cannot make any money whatsoever. It's connected to their sports. However, all other kids walking the hallways, whether they're into music or into fine arts, they had the ability to go out and pursue some of these activities for compensation. So what this change really does is it now puts student athletes kind of on the same playing field that all other kids walk in the hallways during the school for a long, long time. It's really now kind of not singled out athletes who may have some of these economic opportunities. Of course, this started at the college level because it was a billion-dollar industry and the student athletes were seeing none of the economic action. So I can kind of get my head around why NIL probably makes more sense at the college level. Yeah. At the high school level, we've really had to thread a narrow needle, again, just in terms of those economic opportunities and some of the trends that we were seeing in courtrooms across the country. And like I said, we've carved this out to allow individual opportunities for individual kids, providing a service. And if somebody wants to compensate them for that, they're now able to do so, and we're hopeful it works as intended here moving forward.
Mark, are you tight on time, or can you hang on for another segment?
I have one more meeting I've got to run to, so maybe we can look to talk maybe a little bit later on after we see what kind of disclosures have come in, so maybe we can make a date for next month.
All right, we'll do that. Listen, I appreciate your time this morning.
Thanks, Art. Good talking with you.
Same here. Have a great day. Bye-bye now. Mark Uyl, he is the Executive Director of the Michigan High School Athletic Association. And we'll take a break, come back. We'll have open phones for the remainder of the hour.
Jeff Gronsky here, back
to our phones. Gene is in Bay City. Gene, good morning.
Good morning. Stephen Miller is one of Trump's right-hand men. And to me, he seems to be a man that's really full of a lot of hate.
Why is
well,
that?
Back a few weeks back, he was yelling and screaming at ICE that they weren't filling their quotas, that they weren't arresting enough people. Well, ICE and some of the women in charge, they're doing exactly what Steve Miller is telling them to do. And, as far as arresting, they have no choice. ICE has no choice but to arrest people that have been here 20 years or arrest children. They have no choice but to do that because they have their orders coming from Trump's right-hand man, Stephen Miller.
Well, you don't know what those orders are?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
You have no idea what those orders are.
Well, he was screaming. Yes, I do, because he was screaming. You could hear him on the news. He was screaming at ICE that they were not arresting enough people. Well, they were not filling their quotas.
Well, I didn't hear anything. Anyway, I didn't hear anything in there that says you should arrest 20-year citizens or children.
Well, how are they going to fill their quota if they keep? There's
enough bad people out there. They're doing pretty well. And besides, he can scream all he wants. The reality is the agency is run by leadership that dictates what they do and where they do it.
Well, blame the woman when Stephen Miller is the one doing all the yelling and screaming at ICE. The woman isn't the one screaming at him. But anyway, that's not the main thing I called about. The Olympics is such a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's such a happy, peaceful, interesting, joyous thing to watch on TV and everything.
Yeah.
Well, now they're planning on sending ICE to Italy to the Olympics, and I just feel like they're just going to ruin it.
Nah, you won't even see them.
What?
You won't even know they're there if they get there. Besides, they won't have much authority. I mean, if they're there for security for our athletes, it's going to be all behind the scenes. You won't even know they're there. It will have no impact on what you see on the Olympics.
I always say many times, I hope you're right, but I think you underestimate Trump.
I don't.
When he first started talking about the big ballroom, you said, "Oh, he's not going to do that." Well, he did, and I think you underestimate him. But anyway, thank you for listening. Have a nice afternoon.
You too. Thanks, Gene. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
989-752-6111 is the number to call to participate. I want to go back to the Michigan High School Athletic Association just for a minute, and this PBA, or personal branding activities is what they call it, rather than name, image, likeness like the college does. And I think there are some pluses to say about the way they've structured it. They haven't really followed the NIL pattern. There are far more restrictions here in the high school, as there should be. The only thing I said to Mark Ewell, the executive director of MHSAA, is that in a way it's a backdoor pay-to-play. They don't want it to be a pay-for-play. In other words, we're not going to give you $100 every time you throw a touchdown pass. And that can't happen, not in this program. But I still say that it's a backdoor pay-for-play because the only students that are really going to be tapped to receive some of these benefits are the high-level athletes, and he admitted it. Most of the athletes are going to be high-level, being drafted by Division I schools. So you're not going to find, as I said to him, the bench warmer in baseball who never gets in a game is not going to be the one that Mr. Car Dealer is going to ask to sell his cars. It's going to be the quarterback who throws lots of touchdowns and leads his team to victory and is well known in the community. So in effect, he's being paid because he plays well. So I think it is a backdoor pay to play. But is it a good thing? And if the numbers are correct that and I don't know why they wouldn't be, that he gave us from North Carolina, for example, 0.0024% students, 1 out of 750 or 800 students actually end up with anything. It seems like a program created for the very few, and only those that play at the super high level. So I go back to my backdoor pay for play, if you will. Quick break, come back. When we return, we'll talk to Tim in Midland.
This is Senator.
And we're back with you and back to our phones. Tim is in Midland, and we say good morning to him. Tim, good morning.
I say good morning to you too, Art. Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely.
I just want to put my 2 cents on this pay to play NIL.
Yeah.
What I'm going to call is a disaster waiting to happen. First, let's start at the collegiate level. NIL has ruined college football. You can talk to pretty much any coach out there. Anybody that's in the programs, it's pretty much destroyed college football.
Let me say something about that real quick, because I don't think it's NIL that's done that. It's the portal that's done that.
I told you interrupted me.
I'm sorry.
That was number one. NIL, then transfer portal was the second one that I was going to get at. That has ruined college football.
I would agree with you.
Used to be. It's taken what used to be my favorite sport to watch. I love college football, and this last season just made me sick. The Sharon Moore thing down in Michigan, being a huge Michigan fan, was the last straw that broke it for me this last year. And I'm just like, I don't know if I really want to watch much anymore because it's such a disaster right now. But anyways, let it filter down to the high school. I don't think it's a good idea. You're going to get more parents exploiting their kids to gain money for themselves, and it's going to turn into a problem. And I got it. It's 0.01% or whatever it is. I don't think it's good. And it kind of gets into a bigger issue. I'm all about capitalism. But what you've got is basically unchecked capitalism with this now. And there's no regulation on it. You can just pay like it is in college now. Whatever program wants to pay the most is going to get the best athletes.
No, the program. Here's the difference. The programs have to be totally detached. The programs can't do any of that. The programs can't even tell the athlete to go talk to car dealer Charlie Brown because he wants to pay you. They can't do that. They have to be totally separate.
I got it, but don't worry. They will find loopholes around.
Well, some, a few may. Obviously, every rule gets broken.
There's money involved. They're going to find loopholes. It's going to. So getting back, it's unchecked capitalism is what I'm getting at. I don't know what to do about that because I'm all about free market and letting the free market run. But what you're now in college football is destroying it. That in the transfer portal, and this coming into high school sports is like, what happened? Just play sports, have fun.
Well, listen, I'm on your side with this, but what I'm curious about. This is nothing new. We're the 47th state to sign on for this. I'd like to know what the success rate is and what the rate of use is in all these other states. Now, he only quoted Carolina as 0.024%. 1 out of every 750, 800 students.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I have to ask